Welcome back to LK Tuition. My name's Lucas and today we're going to look at percentages of amounts when you've not got a calculator with you. Alright, so hope you're well and let's get started. Alright then, so we've done this in a previous video, but here are just a few common fraction, decimal and percentage conversions. Okay, so when we're looking at a percentage of an amount, it might be helpful to think about what the fractional equivalent of that is. So for example, we've got 50% here, and that is the same as a half. So if you want to find 50% of something, you can divide it by 2. If you want to find 33.3 recurring percent of something, you divide it by 3. And so on. So these are just common ones that'd be good to remember. So 25% is a quarter, 20% is a fifth, 12.5% is an eighth, 10% is a tenth, so just divide by 10, and then 5% is a 20th, so just divide by 20. So those are really common percentage and fractional things. It would be great to learn them all because then that's going to help when you're working out the percentage of an amount. Alright, so here are 4 questions that use this. So feel free to have a go, pause the video, otherwise we shall do them together. Alright then, so the first one, we want to find 50% of 40, but 50% is the same as half. So this is just half of 40. And half of 40 divided by 2 is 20. So 50% of 40 is 20. Okay, the next one, we want to find 25% of 56. So 25% is a quarter. So a quarter of 56. So a quarter, you can half it and half it again, or just divide by 4. If we half it, we're going to get 28. And if we half that again, we're going to get 14. So that's the answer to that one. Alright, next one, we want to find 10% of 90. So 10% is the same as 1 out of 10. So we want to do 1/10 of 90. So we just divide 90 by 10 and we get 9. Alright, and then finally we want to find 20% of 75. Well, 20% is just a fifth. So a fifth of 75 is 15. Okay, and if you're not sure what that is, divide by 5, feel free to use the bus stop method or whatever you use to do normal division. Alright, so we're going to take that a step further then with these questions. So these are using things that were in that table, so 5%, 10%, 20%, 33.333%, 50%, and using that to build up other kinds of percentages. So again, feel free to pause the video and have a go, but otherwise we'll just do it together. So here we've got 30% of 50. Now to get 30% straight away maybe isn't that simple, but in my head I'm thinking, well, 30%, that's 3 lots of 10%. So if I can work out 10%, I can do that 3 times and I'll get 30%. So let's just start by doing that then. So 10% of 50 is, well, 10% is 1/10, so divide by 10, so 10% of 50 is 5. So that would mean that 30% of 50 is going to be 3 lots of 5, which is 15. Okay, so I hope we're happy with that. So we've found 10%, which is 5. We just do what we've normally been doing, divide it by 10. And then we want to build it up to 30 and think, well, how do I get from 10 to 30? I times it by 3. So whatever my answer was for 10%, times that by 3, and that's going to give me 30%. Alright, next one, we want to find 75% of 48. So again, I'm thinking, how do I get to 75%? Well, I could do 25% and times that by 3. So let's do that. So 25% of 48, well, that's just a quarter of that, which is 12. And so 75% of 48 is just going to be 3 times 12, which is 36. Alright, and there are other ways of doing this. We could have done 25% plus 50%. So we know that 25% of 48 is 12. 50% of 48 is half, which is 24. And then 24 plus 12 is 36. So there are loads of different ways to get to these percentages, and it's up to you which route you take. All right, and then number 7, we want to find 15% of 120. So let's do this slightly differently. So let's first find 10%. So 10% of 120, we just divide it by 12, divide it by 10, sorry, and it is 12. So 10% of 120 is 12. And then if I know 10%, I want to get to 15, so I need another 5%. So what I can do with that 10% is I can half it to get 5%. So 5% of 120 is going to be half of 12, which is 6. So that means that 15% is 12 plus 6, which is 18. Yeah, so I'm adding 10% plus 5%. All right, and then the last one, we want to find 83.3 recurring percent of 150. So this to me is a little bit more tricky, but it's looking like 50% plus 33.333%. So let's do 50% first. So 50% of 150 is half of that, which is 75. And then 33.3 recurring percent of 150, well, that's a third. And a third of 150 is 50. So that will mean, sorry, that's supposed to be a little arrow. So that means that 83.3 recurring percent of 150 is those added up, which is 125. Okay, all right, so I hope we're finding these all okay. Now, let me just show you a little trick which might help you in a few questions. So this is called the swapping trick. Now, sometimes you can, well, I say sometimes, every time, you can swap the percentage to the other number and you'll get the same answer. So, for example, if you wanted to find out 24% of 50, you might think, oh, that's quite tricky to do. But 24% of 50 is exactly the same as 50% of 24, which is 12, sorry. Yeah, so half of 24 is 12, and that's 50%. And so you can just swap them all the time, and if you've got something a bit more convenient, a bit of an easier percentage to do, then you can just put that percentage on the other number and do it the other way around. So X percent of Y is the same as Y percent of X. Okay, so we'll just do a few questions in that vein. So feel free to pause, have a go yourself, otherwise we'll do them together. All right, so for example, the first one, we want to find 44% of 25, but actually I can find 25% of 44. So 25% of 44 is a quarter of 44, and 44 divided by 4 is 11. Okay, the next one, we want to find 83% of 10, but, excuse me, that's going to be the same as doing 10% of 83, which is a tenth of 83. And if I divide 83 by 10, I'm going to get 8.3. Okay, so that would have been a nightmare to find 83% of 10 potentially, but 10% of 83, a lot easier. Okay, so number 11, we want to find 12% of 50, but let's just find 50% of 12. So let's do 50% of 12, which is just half of 12, which is 6. And then finally, we want to find 65% of 20, but let's just find 20% of 65, which is going to be a fifth of 65, which is going to be 13. Okay, so that's just a little trick. Sometimes you won't be able to do that, but if you ever see one and you just spot these numbers that are a lot easier to take the percentage of, just swap those things over and it will make your life a bit easier. Alright, so the last one then, so let's just look at finding any percentage. So those are kind of the easy ones, so the 10%, the 20%, the 50% and so on. A little trick for some other ones that might end up nice. But otherwise, this is the technique you want to use for any percentage. So what you want to do, because a percentage is out of 100, find yourself 1% first. So divide by 100 to find yourself 1%, and then times it up by whatever the percentages you want to find. So in this example here, we want to find, for example, 7% of 500. So the first thing we do is we find 1% by dividing by 100. So 1% of 500 is going to be 5. And then to get 7%, you times up by 7. If you wanted 15%, you times up by 15. So to find any percentage of an amount, divide it by 100 and then times it by whatever percentage you get. And if you've not got a calculator, normally this will be a fairly straightforward sum to do. Alright then, so let's just finish off with a few more questions. Feel free to have a go, otherwise we shall have a crack at them together. Okay, so we want to find 3% of 200. So let's just find 1% first. So 1% of 200. We just divide by 100. So that is going to be 2. And then so 3% of 200 is just going to be 3 times 2, because 2 is 1%. So we do 3 times that. And that's going to give us 6. So 3% of 200 is 6. Okay, next up we want to find 9% of 30. So let's find 1% of 30. So we divide by 100 and we're going to get 0.3. And then we want to times that by 9. So 9% of 30 is 9 times 0.3, which is 2.7. Okay, number 15, we want to find 21% of 700. Now, we could divide it by 100 to get 1%. That's going to be useful. And then times it by 21. Or you can use some of the other things that we know. So we could find just 20% just by dividing it by 5. And then add that 1. So let's do that this time. So there's a few ways around it. And, you know, once you practice a bit more and keep going, you can find easier paths to get your answer. So let's just find 1% first. So 1% of 700 is going to be divided by 100, we get 7. And now instead of timesing that by 21, you could do, but it might be easier just to do 20%. So 20% of 700, we divide by 5 and we're going to get 140. Then we just add them up. So 21% of 700 is 147. Alright, next one. Now we want to find 99% of 58. Now here, if we look at this, we think, right, we could divide by 100 to get 1% and then times by 99. But actually, if you think about it, 99 is just 1% away from 100%. So actually, it might be easier to find 1% and then just take it away from the whole thing, take it away from 58. So let's just do that. So 1% of 58 is 5.8. So 99% of 58 is going to be 58, the whole thing, minus 5.8. And that's going to give me 52. Oh, hang on, I've divided it by 10 instead of 100. So let me just recap what we're doing here. So 58, 1% of 58 is 0.58, sorry. So that's 0.58. And then so 99% of 58 is going to be 58 minus 0.58, which is going to be 57.42. Okay, so that's going to be a lot easier than timesing 0.58 by 99. I hope you agree. Alright then, so that has been finding percentages of amounts without a calculator. I'll see you next time for some more maths videos. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And this has been LK Tuition.